Welp, guess you've caught me in a real TNO phase in my life. Today, I'm going to be showing y'all the fun involved with Yunnan, which, if you're not aware, is probably the hardest nation you can play in this mod. Now, that probably doesn't mean much to many of y'all, considering that this is the book club mod, but I'll tell you, this was definitely a challenging campaign for me to win. I remember trying it out 5 years ago and rage quitting because I couldn't beat it, but now I've gotten better. So let me show y'all the Yunnan experience. First off, the lore. China was considered defeated after both Mao Zedong and Chiang Kai-shek went down with the ship in the Battle of Chongqing in 1947. Long Yun, the leader of Yunnan at the time, knew it was pointless to keep fighting, so with the Japanese thoroughly exhausted after that battle, he negotiated a peace that allowed Yunnan some autonomy if he handed over his crown over to his cousin Liu Han. Long Yun had been forced into the cuck chair and must watch the Japanese with their collaborators extract what they want from his land. Liu Han pretty much shares the chair with him, but he believes that the suffering will be worth it in the end because Yunnan will modernize off their investments and get the strength needed for independence from the Japanese. So starting off, my first focus tree is mainly about two things: the widespread rebel groups in southwestern China and the preparations to integrate the neighboring Guizhou province. But before we get to that, we get word from an archaeological expedition that while looking for artifacts from an ancient village destroyed during the Taiping Rebellion, they found a massive tin deposit in the area. They then sent another letter begging for an extra few days to remove the significant artifacts in the area before clearing out, urging us to think about our history and preserving our culture.
Well, say what you want. Man could write a letter.
We didn't have time to waste when money was on the line. When it came time to choose who to sell the resource rights to, we received offers from the Japanese company Zaibatsu, the reorganized Chinese government, and some local Yi landowners. I wanted to keep the resources locally owned for our benefit, but when we fudged the numbers to make our landowners' bid look bigger, the Japanese offers could still easily crush them. It gets to a point where even though we want to empower local industry, it'd be stupid to turn down this money. So the tin is sold off to the Japanese and we get a very nice capital influx for it. With that extra money, Liu Han is going to try to take some decisive action against all the rebel groups running around southwestern China. Nationalist remnants plague our border with Burma, harassing trade. The communists cooperate with the Viet Minh and still operate in rural regions to fight us, but they're not the only problems. The poverty in Yunnan has inspired many desperate men to turn to banditry to sustain themselves. And the greatest threat of all came from within, Liu Han's own army. Many soldiers and officers weren't comfortable with the idea of playing the long game of modernization at the expense of their friends and families. So the National Protection Army movement had been forming in the shadows, preparing for the right moment to strike back against the Japanese. They were the hardest for Liu Han to fight because they prioritized keeping their actions private, just like you should with today's sponsor, ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN provides a service that allows you to hide your data from being sold or stolen by prying eyes with the click of a button. Sometimes I like to go outside, so when I'm making these videos, occasionally I'll go out and work in a cafe, but when I connect to that cafe's Wi-Fi, I'm at a risk of having my data stolen by hackers since it's open Wi-Fi. ExpressVPN puts any chance of that to rest for me by encrypting and rerouting 100% of my browsing activities through one of their secure servers. Another great benefit of ExpressVPN is being able to change your online location. This can be extremely helpful when it comes to getting the most out of the streaming services you already pay for. If you didn't know, pretty much every streaming service has localized licensing contracts, which results in content being region locked in countries where these contracts don't apply. For example, a classic movie like The Shawshank Redemption isn't available to watch on Netflix in the US, but if I switch my connection over to France, I can watch it now. ExpressVPN is amazing at what they do, and if you want to take advantage of it, you should click my link in the description, go to expressvpn.com/thatguy, or scan this QR code to get an extra 4 months added to your subscription. There's no risk in at least trying it, because if you don't like the service, you'll get a full refund within 30 days. Now with that said, let's get back to Yunnan. So there is a whole decision minigame to deal with these problematic groups, but the ironic thing about this game is that if you do it too well, you actually screw yourself. When we eventually fight Japan, these factions will give you extra divisions depending on their power level. With that being said, you should still do as much as you can to suppress the bandits, since they suppress the growth and output of your minuscule economy. The communists as well, to an extent, since they also reduce your production cap. In July, celebrations for the annual Torch Festival began, and with the extra money from the mine this year, festivities were made to be more extravagant than ever. While the people were enjoying these parties, Lu Han and Long Yun had a heart-to-heart chat for the first time in a while. Long Yun was concerned about the direction Lu Han was taking the country in. Long had hoped that when he gave his throne to Lu, that he would work in the best interests of the people and nation. Lu responded that he was doing just that. He was a believer in Gao Zongwu's 5 modernization strategy, that open resistance was futile since China lost the war. Yunnan's and China as a whole's best hope was working with the Japanese and having the benefits of their businesses strengthen their economy to the point that they could force the Japanese to negotiate. This response and mindset as a whole didn't sit right with Long, for he had seen with his own eyes what working with the Japanese had done to the common people. Mothers and fathers working themselves to death just to make enough wages to cover the day's expenses. The Japanese didn't see the Yi as people, they saw them as fuel to power the lights in Tokyo. It's easy to accept the negatives of a decision if you'll never feel them. Lu merely dismissed his concerns and the conversation ended there. Lu focused on doing what he thought was right. He worked with the Burmese government to turn the Burma Road into a proper trade route between the two countries and better their economies. He was reckless with spending on this project, and combined with the economic drain the rebel groups were inflicting on Yunnan, the budget wasn't looking so hot. The debt ballooned to a point where Yunnan faced a full-blown fiscal crisis. We issued some bonds, and that was just enough to get the debt under control, removing the worst effects of the fiscal crisis, but still causing massive inflation. After a year of fighting the different troublesome factions in the Yunnan region, Lu Han orders a report on the status of those rebel groups. The results aren't encouraging, to say the least.
What? No, alright. I know that sounds bad.
Nevertheless, we continue on, now working to annex the nearby Guizhou province. I honestly don't know the lore of why they're their own thing, but anyways, over the next few weeks, I'm making deals with the Guizhou's leadership, smoothing the road for their annexation. We certainly need their economy to boost us because we ain't doing so hot over here. Some officers in Guizhou tried to do a coup against Lu Han to stop the annexation, but they failed. Pretty embarrassingly, to be honest. Nothing could stop Guizhou's integration, and with the completion of the new Burma Road, Lu Han would put the pedal to the metal with industrialization in this next focus tree. Gao Zongwu's 5 modernizations demanded a lot from Yunnan, and Lu would practically turn his citizens to slaves to meet these quotas from Nanjing. On paper though, things were looking up in Yunnan. The men in charge were happy with the rapid economic growth in the country, but if you walk down the streets of Kunming, you wouldn't know that at all. All the partisan groups that existed in Yunnan were becoming more powerful due to the widespread suffering the 5 modernizations brought to the Yi people. Long Yun could only stand to see so much suffering in his country. Enough was enough. It is clear that Long must take a more direct role in the government. He would play dumb to his cousin and in secret he would work with the National Protection Army to make preparations to oust Lu Han from power and begin the uprising to free China from Japan's chains. Lu could start to feel that something was off in the country, so he tried to reinforce loyalty in his officer corps by giving them medals, bonuses, and land. He also tried to directly ask Long Yun if he noticed anything suspicious going on in the government, but Long's poker face was just too good, and poor Lu had no idea what was coming. In 1966, change was on the horizon when Lu Han decided to go for a brief vacation after what he considered a successful year. Long pulled the trigger on his coup. The man would be in for a big shock when he returned to his office.
Shooting. No, I'm just fucking about.
Fuck's sake.
That's pretty much how it went. Lu Han was arrested, and Long prepared to lead the fight that he long awaited for. Didn't even do that intentionally. Anyways, I've been able to produce a lot of somewhat decent divisions. 7 infantry, 2 arty, 20 widths. I also finally get my reward for mostly leaving the NPA faction alone, in the form of 8 more 20 width divisions. Enter our new focus tree to power our fight against the Japanese and their collaborators. You have 10 focuses to prepare yourself for the fight with the Republic of China, and the best ones are pretty easy to rush. Long Yun made a powerful speech in Kunming announcing that the rightful king had returned and they would no longer be slaves to Nanjing or Tokyo. Gao wanted to respond quickly to the National Protection Army's uprising, but his attention was pulled to the Sichuan region. The NPA was inspiring more revolts there, and before we would openly face Gao's forces, we would have to battle for control of the province. I'd invest guns and political power to help my forces there fight the collaborators in the province. For months, our troops engaged these traitors, and on May 28th, the NPA got control of the city of Chongqing, along with the entire province of Sichuan. This would give us a big boost to our potential capacity, plus a wider front to engage Gao's collaborators. Many Chinese are flocking to Long's banner to fight the Japanese. Soon we get our extra divisions based on the power of the nationalist and communist remnants, and I can't say I'm impressed here. We've built a formidable army here, at least. We have a sizable amount of good 20 widths and some reserves to act as fillers. And on July 6th, 1966, we begin the second expedition to liberate China for good. Before I start the attack though, I gotta explain this new decision menu. We have a legitimacy and morale bar, which I think it should be pretty self-explanatory. They aren't super important, we just use that to cash in on the decision buffs below. The most important bar is the one in the center, my momentum. This is basically my life bar. If it hits 0, Long Yun and the NPA is toast. But as long as we keep moving forward, liberating land, and keeping our surrender progress minimal, we will tick up over time, and as it gets higher, we can invite some of the leaders of these other Chinese groups to support our fight against the Japanese. Now, that's enough talk. Time for action. Gao's goons put up a miserable defense at first. Our boys instantly broke their front line, and the casualties really just tell you all you need to know. Unsurprisingly, Gao's troops aren't so tough when they had to fight someone who can actually fight back for a change. Now, despite what everyone expected, Long Yun actually kept Lu Han alive under house arrest. Lu Han felt anger that all his years of hard work was getting destroyed with this suicidal rebellion, and the Japanese would inflict the same terror and atrocities on China that they did 2 decades ago. He still hoped the best for China, that either Gao would stomp this out before the Japanese became directly involved, or that Long actually pulls it off despite the odds. Within the first month of the offensive starting, we had nothing but victories to report. Our boys quickly secured Chengde and continued making moves south of Changsha to eventually sweep up and threaten the vital cities of Wuhan and Nanchang. In the north, we had a great victory in our liberation of Xinjiang, getting an encirclement with it, and now I could get my first friend. He really can't do much besides emotional support, but better to have him on my side than against me. Guangxi was next on the invite list, and while I waited for the momentum to build up and get him on my side, I moved towards Wuhan. Once I took the city, the Japanese established a North China Political Council made up of their best collaborators. Why they did that instead of helping Gao directly, who knows? I guess Tokyo's just had enough of his failures. This made all the land north of the Yangtze a demilitarized zone, so the front was practically narrowed and made encirclements a lot easier. Guangxi was very pleased with our work and joined our side, as we closed our jaws around another 10 division. This stream of victories continued to earn us friends in China, with Shaanxi now throwing their hat in the ring. In November, Longyang knew he had Gao on the brink. All it would take was one last decisive offensive to finally break Nanjing's back. Gao had the interesting strategy of placing the bulk of his remaining forces along the Yangtze River, leaving the city of Nanchang extremely vulnerable and a very obvious target. In the beginning of December, an offensive was launched with NPA troops making a breakthrough towards Nanchang. From there, Long's troops would push north from the southern shore of the Yangtze River to cut off the army's retreat. Over 16 divisions were destroyed in this offensive. The main pocket on the outskirts of Anqing was the biggest catch of the war. Over 100,000 troops perished in that spot. January would be the last month of the Republic of China, since the road to Nanjing is pretty much open at this point. Gao Zongwu had to accept the inevitable. The war was lost, his 5 modernizations plan with it. His staff wanted him to run, but to him, there was no point. Living? To see what? His country get destroyed by Japanese retribution? The NPA can have their futile revolution, but they will not have him. Longyang had accomplished a great thing though. Over half of China was liberated under the NPA or an allied flag, but this was the easy part. The Japanese would soon be getting involved, and they were in a completely different league. But even though they had more divisions, better equipment, tanks, jet fighters, and a way bigger and better industry to support it, we had something better on our side. Vibes. And it was with our supremacy of vibes we would win the Great Asian War. The Japanese hadn't properly reinforced all areas of China, so I took advantage of it where I could. Northern China was a ghost town, so we strolled through to Shandong no problem, but other areas like Guangdong put up much more of a fight. I made AT, but on the battlefield, it looks like we're just chucking golf balls at the Japanese armor out there. Did not make AA though, which I can imagine a lot of my soldiers aren't happy with. For some reason, the Japanese didn't call in Burma and Thailand, so I took the reserves I was using to garrison that front to support the attack on Guangdong. With those reinforcements, the superior Japanese divisions struggled a lot more since I could more easily exploit the weak points in their lines for encirclements. We could really bring the hammer down on Guangdong now. After cutting off their strong points, we would wear their units down with attacks from all sides and finally destroy them. Some Japanese units would just run away into the Chinese interior, which may not seem that bad, but is actually very dangerous for me because all it takes is for Japan to capture a few victory points from me, and then the momentum turns on you and you can die pretty fast. That's what makes this war so hard, really, because if the Japanese have a good few months and regain control of a few of your cities, that's all they need to destroy you. There isn't much room for back and forth here. You have to win and keep winning. And as you liberate more Chinese territory, there is more land to guard against a Japanese counterattack. So make sure you don't skimp on the port garrisons. One bad naval invasion can and will kill you, and I'm speaking from experience here. After the Guangdong campaign was over, I felt pretty good about my performance. Yeah, the Northern Front had stagnated and the warlords could be doing better, but now I could start addressing that issue with reinforcements from the south. Soon it was time to liberate Shandong from the Japanese, and many of the Japanese troops in the area were exhausted from prior combat in the sector, so I focused on the most understrength units to break through and cause chaos behind their lines. A stream of Chinese soldiers turned into a flood, and many Japanese divisions quickly found themselves surrounded with no hope of help. Japanese air sorties were working double time to bludgeon my offensive, and when I passed the Yellow River, it was clear that those planes were having an effect. My deep battle tactics don't work as well when the divisions are half strength, and the Japanese were able to punish me with counterattacks. I didn't want to give the Japanese time to recover though, so I kept pressing my attacks and pushing my divisions to the limit to get any extra encirclements I could. This turned out to be the right call because despite the enemy casts, we bagged a lot more divisions, and eventually the Northern Chinese Political Council collapsed, getting us even more divisions we could kill. The Japanese needed to turn the momentum against me, so finally, the Southeastern Asian puppets were called in to start a new front in Yunnan. They were able to make some substantial gains at first due to lack of resistance, but when reserves from Shandong and the coastal garrison arrived, their troops were ground to a halt. The Japanese then exploited this by making new landings in Shandong and Guangdong. This really showed the strength of the Japanese economy. Despite their losses, they had replenished their units and were back on the attack. Meanwhile, we were barely keeping our head above water here since I expended so much equipment in my Shandong offensive, and unfortunately, my weaker industry struggled to replenish that equipment along with making AA equipment for my guys. By pulling units from the north and deploying some green troops, I managed to stall the Japanese beachheads and eventually start pushing them back. Once that was dealt with, I figured it was about time to do something about the Yunnan front. I mean, they literally occupied Kunming. I know they committed some horrid atrocities when they got that city. They need some liberation. I finished my doctrine, so I had a massive battle plan bonus in battles, and since I finally had AA to mitigate the worst of Japan's cast attacks, this offensive went so well. I'm very thankful for the Viet Minh keeping the good fight going because I could use their controlled land to encircle many Japanese aligned divisions. The roads into all of Southeast Asia were cleared for me, and I made sure to push my advantage. I moved into the area as fast as possible to secure all the land I could before reinforcements arrived to end my fun. While I was doing this, I was also cleaning up the rest of the Yunnan and Western China region. With the capitulation of the Thai government and my new offensive into Mongolia, it seemed that this was about to get wrapped up, but the Japanese aren't exactly known for giving up easily. They once again deployed reinforcements to Southeast Asia and Mongolia to start another counterattack. And I'll be real, they tore my ass up for a bit. I had to order a mass retreat from Thailand to Burma. I'm not exaggerating how bad the combat was for me in Thailand. Look at how bad my infantry is down there. We got 2 guys in a dream ass divisions. Also, impressively, when I encircled some infantry near the Tanatuva area, the Japanese actually tried to break them out and had me sweating with this counter encirclement they pulled on me. It didn't last long though because they didn't have enough divisions to hold this encirclement. The intensity of the combat certainly reflected on my divisions, but they weren't doing it for nothing. I managed to turn this encirclement back on the Japanese again and get more divisions killed. The casualties really show you that this war has not been easy, but despite the industrial advantage of Japan, I have managed to chip down their forces to something below me. With the Japanese unable to do another successful naval invasion and the fall of the Meijing puppet, the Japanese finally came to me with a peace offer. The terms of which were a bit interesting. Immediate ceasefire if we let them keep Guangdong, Meijing, and Manchuria. A very bold suggestion considering that they don't even control 2 of these territories. Obviously, we weren't going to accept this treaty, so we continued our march into Manchuria. I thought it would be easy with the back of the Japanese army seemingly broken, but another wave of reinforcements arrived to give me one last run for my money. Their new divisions were worth 4 of mine, and when you throw in some air support, my exhausted divisions don't do so hot. When faced with such a superior enemy, I use the best tactic at my disposal. I run away. After giving them the time they needed, plus new divisions to replace the ones they lost, I could move back to Manchuria and finally finish this war. Here is a final look at the casualties as I finish off Manchuria. This was a bloody war for both sides, but despite Japan's material advantage, I killed them with 1,000 cuts, and on February 11th, 1972, the Empire of Manchuria was finally defeated. With the end of their last Chinese regime, Tokyo had to face an inconvenient truth. The Great Asian War had not necessarily developed to Japan's advantage. So, they calmly put together another set of demands. Stop marching into Korea or we'll nuke you. At least they're not delusional enough to make demands to hold onto Chinese land now, so we can consider our side satisfied and the Great Asian War can finally come to an end. The century of humiliation is finally over, with China being free of foreign influence for the first time since the Opium War. Vietnam got their freedom too apparently. Great job, guys! Long Yun had finally found peace with his life's mission accomplished. Sadly, he wouldn't last long after liberating China due to tuberculosis destroying his lungs. He had made amends with his cousin Liu Han and gave him a second chance in life. Liu was very thankful for this and even more thankful for Long freeing China. Never before had he been so happy to be wrong. They say their final goodbyes and Long Yun writes down his final words on a piece of paper. He lays down for his eternal rest, happy that the winds of spring once again breathe on the Shanghai gates. There was a lot of discussion amongst the NPA about who should lead China after Long Yun's passing, and after some debate, it only made sense that to show the legitimacy of this new Republic of China, they should begin with someone related to the man who founded the original one, Sun Yat-sen. An invitation was sent to his son, Sun Fo, who was in exile in the United States. Of course, Sun Fo couldn't resist such an invitation, and he boarded the first plane he could get back to China. And for the first time in 20 years, he returned to his homeland. On March 5th, 1974, Sun Fo formally became the president of China, and the nation celebrated knowing that a bright future was awaiting this new republic. And with that done, that is the end of our journey here. Sun Fo will hopefully lead the Republic of China to greatness. I hope y'all enjoyed watching this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like so other people will see this video too. This was definitely a lot more challenging for me than the South Africa War, but maybe that's because I goofed by making AA so late. Anyways, I'll be returning to my Realism CK3 playthrough next time, so make sure y'all are subscribed to catch that. Or if you didn't watch that CK3 video, check it out now. Thank you to my alumni helping support the great content and giving me the means to invest more into these videos. Also, big thanks to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check them out through my link below to get an extra 4 months free to your subscription. That's all for me today. I hope to see you in Constantinople. Bye bye.